Welcome to Spartan Chatter, everybody. My name's Sam. You guys might know me as Snickerdoodle. I'm on the community team here at Halo Studios. And Spartan Chatter is just an audio live podcast feed, something or other that we do here on our Halo Discord, just to have some fun, hang out. Lately, it has been a book club, which I'm not mad about because there are a lot of books in the Halo series. And we're covering a new one today. We're going to go over Halo Empty Throne. And as always, I am not here alone. I am joined by the one and only Haraspis. Take it away, Alex.
Yeah, Alex Wakeford here. I've become kind of part of the Spartan Chatter furniture, really, I think, over the last year or two. Talking about Empty Throne today, which I'm excited about because, I got to work on this book from the beginning, and it was with the wonderful Jeremy Patenaude, who's the author, so I have no end of good things to say about that man.
So for those of you that don't know, Jeremy used to work on the franchise team here at, he worked on the franchise team when we were still 343 Industries, but it's whatever. He worked here. He worked for us.
He was here basically from the start of 343 Industries.
He was, speaking of being fixture and furniture, he was that guy. I remember you were still on the community team. You were still on my team when this book started to become more of a reality, I think, like when it started to come together. I'm trying to think of how to word this, because I suspect this book has been in the works for a little bit of time based off of like all the threads that are pulled together and all the things, like all the callbacks and everything. So I just remember you coming in to stand up and being like, I'm working on Empty Throne today, and thinking, what are you doing? Like, why are you constantly working on this empty? How can the throne be empty if you're constantly working on it? But I get it now.
Just laying the groundwork for my transition from community team to franchise.
This is it. He did so much work on Empty Throne. They're like, you know what? You're just gonna come over here now. So it makes total sense. But I think we all knew that was coming anyways, if we're being honest, right? We saw you show up. It's like, how long until they steal you? So
yeah, that's the question. How long do we have you for?
right. And then we had to find a replacement, and Mutinous Core has done actually a very good job. I'm not saying he is not Alex. I wrote 48 million words on the story of Halo, but he has done a very
47.9 million,
I'm rounding up. Come on, give yourself some credit. But he has done a very, very good job of stepping into some very monumental shoes. So shout outs to him. But anyways, let's go back before we totally pigeonhole off on that. Empty Throne. This was it is a book that fills in a lot of gaps, right? Takes place right before Halo Infinite kind of type thing? Like
more or less, it's late 2559, so just before the destruction of Doisak, and it goes spoilers, by the way, sorry, and runs through to basically the start of 2560.
Yeah, so the 2550s are not a good time in
literally
human
like the worst decade imaginable. I think
skip that if you can. Don't plan to be around.
Parallel to real life, you might say. We're in our 2550s era,
Alex. No.
Not to bring the tone down.
No, the Covenant War ended. Okay. Anyways, so this happens this for those that have wanted a little bit more backstory of how did we end up where we are, on Zeta Halo and Chief and all that? This is really the book, right? And I'm going to get this out of the way up front. This literary style is not my favorite. And I think it's really funny that it's called Empty Throne. Obviously, it is literally a Game of Thrones. And this has the same literary style as Game of Thrones, which made me not finish those books. I literally DNF'd those. Because
we proposed that title, but for some reason they said we couldn't have it.
Man, I can't imagine why. But no, that whole jumping around from person to person to place and just never being in the same spot for too long is not good for my brand of ADHD, and I can't handle it. I just really, really needed to be in one place and be like, this is it. This is all I got, and I could not handle that. So this was a tough read. Yeah. That was a tough read for me personally from that aspect, but I liked the content in it, right? So it was really hard for me to make that work in my head. I was like, I really like this story. I really like the people, but I don't like that they're taking me away from this person right now and making me read about this other stuff. So
the kind of books you're describing, we'd done a few of those in sort of succession with Shadows of Reach, Divine Wind, Rubicon Protocol, Outcast, and Epitaph. So this was kind of the natural point where we'd breadcrumbed a lot of the previous stuff leading into Halo Infinite, and this was kind of the explosion of everything else going off happening in the galaxy. So naturally, it was a story that required a much broader scope with a very large cast of characters.
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and I do think that is valid. There is a time and a place for that. I think stories like that need a particular kind of prose. All books live and die by prose, but ones that jump care. That is absolutely true. I think like the story definitely has to be engaging, right? Behind if you're constantly moving, you have to have something engaging and a reason to hook back to it. And for me, like there were definitely parts of this that I thought were more engaging, but this definitely had that engagement for them at least, which kept me going because there were definitely parts of this I was like, I just really want to get back to the guy mad about his home world being blown up, right? Like he was big mad about that. Can't blame him, all things considered. But yeah, and I'm grateful though that we don't have a lot of stories that require this level of character development for this many people, because how many, you said you counted this up and you landed on an absurd number, right?
Oh, it's well over 80, yeah.
I just don't even understand how you keep track of that as a writer. Like that outline and storyboard must have been crazy.
Well, you
Absolutely
see, Sam,
crazy.
when I was in all those stand-ups and I said I was editing Empty Throne, and you were like, Alex, what the hell does that even mean? That was very much part of it.
Oh yeah, no, like I said, after going through this book, I suddenly had a way better understanding and appreciation for those comments because
I
like
see
that was
Stumpy saying there has to be a
wild.
spreadsheet. Yes, I have created many spreadsheets in my time.
Yeah, I would imagine there's also flowcharts, right? I really hope there's a flowchart somewhere with like red arrows being like this has to get thread to here
I actually
because
find it one of the great joys of going through these books. I've been obviously working on the omnibus now, but going back to the Fall of Reach, the Flood, and First Strike, and making my spreadsheets for those, which are very exciting. And then, as over the next few years, I'm probably going to do the entire rest of the book series.
that's a lot. That's a lot of books. I mean, did we how many are we up to now?
Oh gosh, it must be nearly 40.
This is a good time to plug the book guide, right? aka.ms whack Halo book guide if you are interested. Alex has been doing a great job of keeping that updated with a snip of the cover and then a quick short snippet, probably just the back. I assume it's the writing that's on the back of the books.
Like a truncated version of it, yeah, just to like, hey, here's what this book is kind of about.
Yeah, if you're like, hey, I really only want to read books about Master Chief, you can just go on that page and search for Chief and be like, hey, this is great. This is exactly what I want. So really great. So Empty Throne is now on there as that was added, when the book came out.
February 2025, which feels like 50 billion years ago already.
Are you sure? Are you sure that's right?
I think so.
Time has no meaning anymore. But all right. So I think let's get into it before we definitely side quest off of this. Empty Throne has a lot of really neat throwbacks. It pulls in a lot of characters that we haven't seen in a while or that we're seeing in like way different eras, right? Like Grey Team comes back. Which I really was surprised to see in a good way because I love Grey Team. They are in my favorite Halo novel of all time. So that was very exciting. And I think they have a really different personality than the Spartan teams we've seen so far, which is a lot of fun.
That'd be the
There's
Cold Protocol that is your
yes,
favorite.
exactly. Old school
That would
one.
be relevant.
Yep. So Cole Protocol. And speaking of Cole Protocol, you got Abigail Cole, which I did not expect that reading this because I went into this blind. I just try to do that with most of the media I do. I don't like to watch movie trailers. I try not to read too much. I just like go into it blind. And very surprised to see my favorite character in all of Halo's daughter was in this. So very, very quickly became one of my favorite parts of the book. And then what else? We've also got like all the Covenant factions and the Banished. I think the best. What did we discover yesterday? Somebody called it Tartar Sun.
Yes.
That was so. I went looking for just like people's thoughts on Empty Throne yesterday to see what I could find, and there was a really really great summary on Reddit. If I can find it, I'll drop it in chat later. But if not, just know it was a fantastic summary of this novel.
It was like Tol-Joran learns to not be racist.
Yeah, right. Like learns to not be racist. They talk about Tartar Sun, baby Halsey. I was like, this was incredible. Such a way with words. Beautiful. Chef's kiss. Anyways, I will let you take it away from here because I know you can like table set it. We can get into some of the things. Apple, you have not missed much. Actually, we are just about to start up on the novel. We have kind of been, we are just getting started because we have been talking about anything but the book so far. So I'm trying to get us into the book right now. We just covered some of the main characters, and then I'm handing the stage over to Alex to let him take it away for a little exposition.
Yeah, I mean, just for a little more table setting, the true main character to call out, I think, is Mr. Jeremy Patenaude. As we mentioned, he all the way back with the Xbox 360 Halo Waypoint app, which is still one of my favorite Halo experiences ever. He used to do some of the old video series like Vintage Fisticuffs and A Different Way to Campaign, where, playing through Halo 1 through 3, he would show some of the different sort of ways you can engage with the encounters in the games. But obviously, he was working on a lot of the story things as well on the side. Things like Halsey's Journal, the Forerunner saga he was involved in, and he's obviously credited as one of the authors of Halo Mythos, which was a fantastic story summary reference book all the way leading all the way up to Halo Wars 2. And then he's done, a lot of things where his name wasn't attached to it necessarily, like the adjunct at the end of Shadows of Reach, Sacrifice, and certainly the end to Bornsteller's story in Fractures, which is still one of my favorite Halo stories ever. It's very short, but that end to Bornsteller just felt like a really nice cap to his adventures and the horrors that he'd been through the Forerunner saga. So this is very much a book that has kind of built up over time from Jeremy's time at the studio. There's like a mashup of all these different ideas and concepts that have been explored, maybe like partway made it into projects or were like left on the cutting room floor or whatever it might be. So as a result of that, it all kind of that inspiration well as it was got funneled into this. And I mean, we've talked previously, I remember, about one of the main characters, which is James Solomon, James 005 from The Fall of Reach, where I discovered those pictures of Idris Elba in his personal folders. And I was like, Jeremy, what is this? So, oh, that's James.
Wait, what?
You were definitely there the last time that we talked about this.
Oh, I do not remember. That is what?
Yeah, I was just poking around to see what story resources were hanging around in some of the franchise folders for something, and I just stumbled upon this folder full of pictures of I think it was specifically from Pacific Rim, his character in that, just lots of pictures of Idris Elba.
That's fantastic. I have no recollection of that, and I could not be more pleased to hear that. That's so funny. That y'all, what you guys don't realize is that if you look at any one of our computers and look at our reference images for things, my folders are so chaotic. I have assets from everything. I'm like, oh, I might need this video one day. Let me download it. Crazy stuff. So I'm surprised, but not surprised, right? Have a good day, Spartan. You can catch the rest of it on YouTube probably tomorrow. So have a great night. But that's so funny. Just an entire folder of Idris Elba is amazing. Absolutely
not
amazing.
Just like one or two pictures. We're talking over a dozen.
And these are, I assume they're all just reference photos, right? Like what could...
Yes, basically.
I love that. I love that so much.
Like low-res screen caps and stuff like that.
That makes it even better. I just saw an article on CNN. Let me just screen snip it, right? That's incredible. What
I mean to say that I cannot say enough good things about Jeremy. He was a wonderful person to work with, and especially on this book, it was a privilege to kind of get to work closely on this, because obviously he was still around when we were doing work on the Rubicon Protocol and even Epitaph and Outcasts. But this was his book ultimately, so getting to sort of work with him in telling his story was just really nice.
Was this the first Halo novel or story that he had written for the franchise? Straight up to put his name on?
Yes, I believe so. He had obviously he'd been working on the books since, I want to say 2011, since he was I remember old Spark casts back when, that's what Spartan Chatter used to be called, where he's on a podcast with Greg Bear, David Ellis, and various other people from 343's past, talking about, the making of those books, which he seemed to be quite involved in, and obviously going through Broken Circle and the following books from there. He's done a lot of wonderful work on the franchise.
Which is the fact, which I think is what surprised me, that this was the first written work with his name on it, right? Because like you have just gone through so many things that he has actively worked on, and so many parts of the Halo universe, that it's really surprising that this is literally the first thing. Because he's been doing this for so long.
Yeah. I realized at a point that a lot of what I loved about Halo came from Jeremy. I mean, even going back to when, in my fan days where he was running the Ascendant Justice blog, which was like, that was back in the Halo 3 through ODST days, where he was doing all the like narrative analyses and things like that, I would take to as inspiration for my blog there. So there's that fun kind of lineage running back through all that.
Was he the catalog account on the Waypoint forums back in the day?
No, he wasn't.
Who was that? Is that still like secret?
I'm not sure if it's been stated who that was,
okay.
Actually.
It would not have, having gone through all this, it would not have surprised me. So, all right. We got to stay on topic. I'm very clearly bad about this, but all right. So we've already kind of established that Empty Throne set in late 2559, leading up to the events of Halo Infinite, right? So it's kind of bridging that gap, filling in a lot of those empty questions. And we know after Halo 5, Cortana's kind of on a bender. There's a lot going on there. You got to stop her.
I've never heard it described that way before.
Am I wrong, though?
I suppose not.
I mean, she's losing her, like, she's... yeah, no, we're gonna leave it with that. But obviously
she's drunk on power.
Exactly. She's drunk on power. Nobody wants this, so everybody wants to stop her, right? And I think that was actually kind of an interesting, like, I was reading this, is like, oh, literally nobody wants this girl to have all this power. The Banished want to stop her, the humans want to stop her, the Covenant want to stop her. Literally nobody wants her to be in charge. So hence the Game of Thrones, we're going to go after that throne, right?
100%, yeah. And, obviously the games present a much more narrow experience. When they go to Zeta Halo, the ring gets, jumped through slip space somewhere else in the galaxy. So
just as you do, casually, just, taking the ring on a walk.
Moving through slip space portals.
Yeah, no big deal.
So the notion with Empty Throne was what's going on in the rest of the galaxy while all that is happening. And, we, as I said, we breadcrumbed some of this with like Outcasts and Rubicon Protocol, where, we've touched on various things that were going on, but it's from a much smaller and narrower point of view. And this was kind of the big explosion of like, all right, here's everything that was going on. Here's what everyone was up to, leading up to and beyond that point.
And we really are covering like all parts of the galaxy in this, because you're on Earth, you're on Venetia, not called Venetia. Like, that was a surprise to me. Like, but also not a surprise once they were like, oh, and then you remember it's kind of like where all the mercenaries are. I was like, that totally makes sense. Like, no rules, mind your own business, right? Like, keep your eyes down, don't look at anybody, kind of thing. But you are all over in this. We are literally all over the galaxy in different corners, checking in on everybody here.
Even some old maps that appeared in like Halo 4, we go to Cascade, which is Skyline, which one of the old Halo like World Championships was won on back in 2013, I believe it was. For some reason, that just really sticks in my memory, that particular match.
That map was the TARP map.
TARP map.
Do you not remember? Skyline is like, isn't that the one where there's a tarp on it, and that was all people were remembering was the Halo 4 tarp?
I have no memory of that.
Okay, well, all right. Yeah, I will have to dig some of that up for you later. But and then the next one that got me was actually the Halo 4 map Vortex. I didn't realize this was a separate planet.
Yeah, Tessera, which we always try to find, fun ways to include some of the multiplayer map spaces, because it's just this deep well of potential lore that you can tap into. And whenever we do, I think, the results are always quite fun from that.
So, and I think the only other places we haven't touched on are Rosbach's world, Nissa. I'm bad at pronunciation, so if I've said these wrong, please correct me.
Nicer.
Nissa. Okay. And then Warreal? Nissa. Yes.
That's one of the moons of Doisak.
Yes. And then Boundary. Yeah, I would have also said Nissa. Kat, I definitely wanted to say Nissa, so Nissa. Okay.
It's a planet hopping adventure. And actually, when we were working on this book, we were also kind of laying some of the groundwork in the Waypoint Chronicles for Nissa, because obviously that's where the Avery J. Johnson Academy is. And so the sort of sequence of it was Anvil Accord, that Waypoint Chronicle came out, and at the end of that story, they say that there is a distress call that they've received from a world called Nissa, but we never said at the time that that was the Avery J. Johnson Academy. And then I think about 6 or 7 months later, this book comes out, and that is where it then, confirmed that that was the planet that the Academy was on. And then a following 6 months from that was when we did the Battle for the Academy two-parter for the Waypoint Chronicles. So we were able to kind of thread some of that reveal through some of the different fiction there, which was quite fun.
I feel like you guys just look at this long term, and like that ability to look that far long term on these is crazy to me, because you're like, oh, well, we do this in 6 months, we can bring up this one random sentence that we said like last month. Crazy. So we cover all that. The people, we've touched on a few of the people. Let's cover those, and then we can like get into some of their story. But Grey Team comes back, which is really cool. You see them first things first. They're like right off the ship, like on a warthog on a mission, right? Crazy. Tol-Joran, the Shadow Intent crew, War Chief Severin, who is Tartar's son, right?
Our son.
Son of Tartarus, for those really following along. Yeah, Tartar's son is just so good. Dovo Nesto, Octavio Morales, Abigail Cole, and then James Solomon, which I thought it was funny that Jeremy he was kind of sneaky about Ty, like bringing that up, who he was, and like he saved that for a little bit to like kind of get you interested and be like, surprise.
Yep.
Grand nephew of Macadoodle, Maccabeus,
of course.
Yes. So the story, I forgot how to spell it one day, and I was asking Alex something about Maccabeus, and I just said Macadoodle, and he knew exactly who I was talking about, which was fantastic. So that's now stuck in my.
Just a weird nickname for Master Chief.
No, it's just Macadoodle is that guy. But yeah, so there's so much happening, and it starts out with rescuing Hood and Osman, right? Who we haven't seen in a while. They're just kind of there.
They've been chilling on Rothbach's world since the year of our Lord 2016, I want to say, back when Fractures came out. So it's been a while.
That's a long time. That is a really long time to just be chilling. Hood is just doing push-ups and pull-ups all day, right? Because what else is there to do?
That was really fun, actually, was catching up with Hood's perspective. So interestingly, like when we were starting on this novel, you didn't have a chapter from Hood's point of view. It was from Grey Team's, as they just went and kind of rescued them, and then we moved on from there. But since it had been so long, we were like, actually, it'd be quite fun to just kind of dig into their perspective and, have a moment to breathe. So we actually have, split POVs from Hood and Osman as things are going on there, and we kind of get where they're at mentally at this point in time. Because when we left them on Rosbach's world, Hood was developing a bit of a drinking problem from everything that was going on, and it was obviously all like a very hopeless situation. So catching back up with them and sort of seeing things from their perspective, which we haven't for a very long time. I don't think we've ever had a POV chapter from Lord Hood in the fiction before, and Osman certainly not since Kilo 5, really. Catching up with them was always good fun.
Yeah, and I think it helped give them a personality, right? Just like reestablish that who they are in the universe. Like, because otherwise, why do you care about these people if you don't know? If you haven't read Kilo 5, or if you haven't seen the Lord Hood, all I can think of when I see that is that profile card in MCC. Anytime,
potato face Lord Hood.
It is. I will never forget that. That face is
Everyone knows what you mean by that.
If they don't, you go look it up and then thank me later.
Of course, last time we saw Osman, she was left with a bit of a dilemma because with her is not only Black Box, but a bunch of HICOM AIs in a briefcase. And she gets left a choice at the end of Rossback's world where she can either forcibly recruit these AIs, she can destroy them, or she can activate them one by one and give them a choice, join the created or help us out. And so kind of the answer to that is the same way that she dealt with Halsey originally, which is that she didn't really do anything. She took the secret fourth option and was like, I'm gonna think about this because I'm not too sure. So now she's kind of being forcibly pulled back into the fight, and she's coming to understand that Oni has kind of moved on without her a little bit, because we get a bit more from Julan Alsigny, who was from Contact Harvest, Johnson's paramour from that particular scene, you may recall. He'd been in Oni for a much longer time. Same with Octavio Morales, who we'll get to, where they've sort of been, almost running the show since then.
I think what got me in that was that Osmond's surprise at functionally being left behind. She was like, "What?" I was like, "What do you expect? You haven't like they're not going to wait for you for how long's it been? Almost, it's
Basically a year, yeah.
yeah, it's been so long. They're not just going to like wait around. Like they have to do something." So I think her surprise and confusion at not being looped in, like in the loop of everything, was a little interesting, but I think that also just comes from her. She's been that girl for so long, so it's hard to, come to terms with that. But yeah, we start that off very strong by Grey Team being dropped in on the planet with a warthog and just being like, basically, shut up and drive, right? Just hop in and then we're going. No questions.
Yep.
Just
Guardian's shown up. We got to get out of here with Black Box and move on.
I don't remember where. I think there was like, actually I read that somewhere in the book. They were Jeremy basically took shut up and drive and made it sound very officially, and I was like, that's funny. I feel like that was an inspiration, and if not, it should have been.
My favorite little bit in this is the suggestion that Grey Team might have shot down Hood and Osmond if they'd made a fuss about the AIs, because their mission is that they are there to retrieve the briefcase and Black Box. It's a bonus to get these two admirals back. But when Osmond is kind of making a bit of a fuss about it, they're like, oh, they seem to be holding their weapons in a way that suggests that they're going to act if things go sideways.
Yeah, and that is such a different personality from the Spartan teams that we have seen more recently, right? Like Blue Team is definitely, there's a little bit more empathy, like not empathy, but there's more understanding of things are happening.
Like heroic Knights of the Round Table, right? The sort of platonic ideal of Spartans as heroes.
Right, and Grey Team is very like one track. Like the mission is get that briefcase. The extra stuff, extra. If they give me problems, that wasn't the mission.
I mean, the team called Grey Team has some kind of like grey morality thing kind of going on about them.
Funny how that works out. I do love Grey Team though. I think they are super fascinating, and but also like when push comes to shove, like they don't mess around. They got you, right? They are all there. So, all right. So let's move on. Let's use brought up Octavio, which I think was like a super deep cut. The
deepest of deep cuts. I remember I went to dinner with Jeremy and he was sort of laying this story out to me. And when he brought up Octavio Morales, I was like, now hang on a minute, that name sounds quite familiar. And he was like, yeah, this is going to be somebody from all the way back in I Love Bees. And he explained to me that this was going to be codename Surgeon, who is a character that has appeared in a recurring kind of way since the Fall of Reach in the book. This is one of the sort of only POVs that we've had throughout a number of the books, certainly in the earlier years of the franchise. And this was going to be the point where, we sort of like lift the veil on who some of these people are. So codename Surgeon and codename Coal Miner, which is what Julan Alsigny's codename is as well. So when you go back through some of the old fiction, you now know like, oh, that's who these two, who these two are, who's been communicating back and forth.
Definitely like little puppet masters, like working in the dark. Making moves, right? You don't know what they are, but they are making those moves. You just don't realize it.
And that's really how I think Jeremy threads the needle very carefully of explaining who some of these characters are in the book, because parallel to Octavio Morales is Dovo Nesto, right? If Octavio Morales is kind of the shadow master behind Oni, then Dovo Nesto is the shadow master behind the Covenant. He's part of the Order of Restoration. They've been like pulling the strings in the background of Covenant history with the hierarchs and nobility in the Covenant. And Dovo Nesto uniquely claims that he's been around since the very beginning of the Covenant. So he's thousands of years old if his claims are true. And his mission in this book is to claim control over the domain, ascend to godhood. This is his personal great journey. Once Cortana is ousted, he's going to take her place. So that's just a really good way, I think, to help. If you're picking this book up for the first time, you can sort of see some of those parallels between these characters and go, oh, okay, I see what this is all about. Because everyone is after kind of the same thing. The UNSC, the Covenant, the Banished, they all have the same goal. They're just coming at it from 3 different angles.
Right. It is like we kind of laid out earlier. It is that Game of Thrones, right? Everybody's angling for the same thing.
Yeah.
But what is it like you were talking about? If you believe him or whatever, that's the kids say, big if true, right? Don't know. I think one of my favorite parts one of my favorite threads that he brought in was James, because also, like I said, he doesn't tell you outright who he is. He just kind of refers to him as James or then Solomon, and then you find out, like, put it together, and it's like, oh, that's a name I haven't heard in a very long time. Super cool to find out like what happened to him. So that was a neat surprise. Basically living his best mercenary, doing whatever needs to be done for Oni, right? Just kind of operating in the dark a little bit here and there, doing things as needed.
Yeah, it's funny. He's one of the Spartans who's kind of been one of the only true MIAs over the years, because we experienced that chapter in The Fall of Reach from the Master Chief's point of view. And the last he hears, is and sees is of James getting his thruster pack exploded a little bit and him sort of rocketing out into space, and like, oh, I wonder what happened to him.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. So he's recovered and revived by Oni, and he becomes a sort of wet work operator for them, answering, specifically to Morales. He gets his own ship. He gets a lovely AI called Lola, who was a fun character in this book. And he's got total freedom to run these high-risk missions, any way he pleases, so long as he completes his objective. But the only caveat for him is that if he fails, then he's either going to die, or he's probably going to die given the nature of what kinds of missions he takes on, and only will disavow any kind of knowledge or connection to him. So he is well and truly kind of a ghost operative in that sense. And as we sort of meet him in the book, he's very tired of the life that he's leading. He realizes it's a very empty life. He doesn't even know if he's, ultimately doing any good. The way that we're introduced to him is a really awesome chapter of him taking down 6 frigates, which was an action set piece I hadn't anticipated when we were going through this the first time, and that was really fun. And obviously, when he's doing that, he encounters some of the Janissaries, the renter Spartans, as he calls them in narration in that chapter, and that was good fun. Really enjoyed that, because that was around the time that in Halo Infinite, we were building into some of that lore around some of the alternative super soldier programs that are being explored.
Somebody in chat said, I love that Alex is still so excited about Halo Lord. He lives for this, cat. He lives for this. He is in his element. So we kind of have, all these mirrors a little bit. Then we go over to the Covenant side, and you have Severin. Now I just confused myself. So not Covenant, Banished, right? Sorry.
Well, it's a bit of both.
Yeah, right. That's why I'm like, I don't really know how to go here. But son of Tartarus son, he basically becomes like a little acolyte of Dovo Nesto, right? He's like, you are the guy. You are the guy that I want.
Yeah, Dovo Nesto was both, obviously he was a mentor to him, but also essentially kind of a father to him as well. So there's this tug of war, this push and pull in his allegiance between the Covenant and the Banished. Because on the one hand, he's gaining this prestige and recognition within the Banished. He's been elevated to the rank of war chief by Atriox and Escharum, despite his past affiliations, obviously his family affiliations with Tartarus, who is hated by the Jiralhanae, for the position that he kind of put them in. But he's got this very profound personal loyalty to Dovo Nesto, which is something that obviously the Sanshraum is going to manipulate and pull at those strings. And at the end of the book, Severin decides where it is that he stands, and he ultimately, chooses the Banished. Because he discovers that Dovo Nesto has been making much the same promises to the wonderful Sally Neon, everyone's favorite, how everyone puts it in the book, like waste of breath, waste of space, absolute waste man, Sally Neon. Nobody cares about him. Everyone's incredibly upset whenever Sally Neon shows up. And Severin is the one to put an end to this particular character.
Somebody in chat said, I love that he ends up being the Darth Vader and essentially overall leader. Spoilers, I guess. But if you've gotten this far,
it's been over a year.
Right. Like at this point, it's fine. It's funny that you say Darth Vader because that Reddit comment found basically was like, yeah, he gets Darth Vadered. He turned it into a verb. So same, absolutely on the same track here. Can you believe a prophet would lie? Like,
right? What a surprise.
Prophet lied? Never. Then you've got Captain Abigail Cole and her ship, the Victory of Samothrace, which I really liked that name. I did one of my favorite courses that I've ever taken in school was an art history class. And we talked a lot about the winged Nike of Samothrace, and like I've seen it in person, stuff like that. So I really liked that name. I just thought it was very elegant feeling.
A cool ship. We don't get many Valiant class super heavy cruisers in the fiction. It's usually like smaller scale frigates and cruisers. So this was a fun one to use.
And obviously, if you are new here, Preston J. Cole is my favorite character in Halo. I think he is the most interesting character in the franchise just because his story is bonkers. So if you don't know, look it up. It's exciting. It's fun. It's crazy. It feels very superhero, like very fake, but it's insane. So having his daughter be another ship captain was really fun. And I did not expect that.
Like you'd think that she's quite young, but by the time this book takes place, she must be around 60 years old, actually, in terms of chronology, because she would have been born around 2500 or so.
I actually don't think I put that together. I really did think she was like maybe 30s or 40s or something. Did not think
which
about
she
that.
Could be, as Canadian says, there's cryo. There's people spend years in cryo sleep, traveling between places. Obviously, that's less of a concern in sort of the modern age, but it still happens. So yeah, it's really interesting because when I first pictured her, I was like, oh yeah, I pictured somebody who was much younger as well. But if you think about the timeline, then I guess that makes sense. And I do have a bit of a confession around Abigail Cole, because Jeremy's original notion was that she would be captain of the UNSC Eternity, which was the sister ship to Infinity. And I might have talked him out of that one. I thought that it would be more interesting to be a different class of ship rather than repeating some of the like hero ship problematic elements that sometimes we have with Infinity, by just saying like, oh, and there's another one out there as well. So actually having a more specialized Valiant class seemed like a more fun.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I think it was definitely unique. And like you said, we don't see a lot of them. So it was really fun to see that. The name was cool. Like that like the name instantly got me and I was like, oh, that's different. I like that. And then obviously just the ship battles are cool because I think we haven't, for Halo being a space fiction thing, we'd spend a lot of time on the ground, I feel like, for a lot of these books. So seeing big ship space battles was really cool, especially like when they are tactical and they have to be precise and they're like, oh, we're too close. And when you stop to think about it, too close is still really far for us, right, as people. But too close for a ship is probably I don't even want to know how many hundreds of kilometers, right? So
Yeah, it
I
was really
really
fun as well.
enjoyed
Like,
those.
people really seem to gravitate towards them as being Nyland-esque, is how a lot of people sort of described it, which is great. I mean, I know that's what Jeremy was very much hoping for. That was his intention, and I think we've not really had a lot of major space battles in the books in recent years, which I think, is a regret of mine because I love reading them as well. So that's definitely something that I'm keen for us to lean more into. And it's great because obviously you've got the Covenant, UNSC, and Banished in this, so you get a real sort of different sense of their individual tactics and what kind of flavors they bring to space combat. But they are all ultimately quelled whenever a Guardian comes into the picture, like during the battle, in the Sol system, where two of the Guardians come in, they're about to unleash their pulses. It's like, oh, we got to get out of Dodge.
Gotta go. Bye. We're done. I am trying to keep up with chat a little bit too. Shadow of Intent. Some other people are saying they love the space battles for sure. Make Jagga have a girlfriend. Okay, come on, dude. This is not dating sim. All right, and then we've got, I think the last main character that we need to cover here is Tol-Joran, right? The one
Yes.
that learned to not be racist, according to one random person's comment, which was very funny. So she goes through like a big character development though.
Yeah, this was actually one of my favorite parts of the book personally, and I say that because this was one of the areas that I kind of got to work more closely with with Jeremy on. So she was introduced all the way back in Joseph Staten's novella in 2015, Shadow of Intent, which is fantastic, absolutely brilliant novella. I recommend anyone who's got any interest in Halo pick that up. I mean, first of all, everyone loves Joseph Staten, of course, fantastic writer, but also the book is short. It's about 150, 200 pages or so, less than that maybe. Follows the shipmaster from Halo 2 and 3, Retards for Doom, who is a major character in this book as well. And Tol-Joran is introduced in there, and she's a major POV character in Empty Throne. She was orphaned by the Order of Restoration. They killed her family and her keep, with the exception of her brother. So one of the driving forces in this book is her desire for revenge. She's on this path of self-destruction because she is just so fueled by hatred and rage, and it's kind of corroding her from within. And her mentors, Ratas and Volsaran, they're struggling to kind of reach her through this anger. But ultimately, she gets betrayed by Volsaran, who's the aged Sangheli Blade Master, who is actually loyal to Dovo Nesto. And that really kind of challenges her perspective on things. There's a fantastic scene where he's defeated her after this big battle on Boundary has kind of gone down, and he's got the kill shot on her, but he doesn't take it, which was a nice little there is that genuine fondness there that he holds for her, which meant that he couldn't do it. He was able to beat her down, but he couldn't finish the job. So I wonder if that will come to bite him in the future.
Is
And of
that
course,
foreshadowing of any point, or is that just you like genuinely wondering?
yes.
Okay, that's fair. I expected as much.
It's always the way with revenge tales that if you don't kill that person, then they might come back in some way.
Right, you left a loose end. Like, what's gonna happen?
Exactly.
Right, you never know. Yeah, for sure.
It's because of that emotional compromise because we get to see some of their adventures in this book, which is great fun. The first chapter with them is when they're storming one of the Order of Restoration ships, and they find the Forerunner War Sphinxes aboard it, and they start piloting them. And of course, when I say they, I mean the Ungoy Stolt is with them as well, another character from Shadow of Intent, who is this absolutely beastly Ungoy, who's incredibly strong, who's taken on a Spartan before and lived to tell the tale. He's a fantastic character, and so Tull ultimately comes to let go of some of her hatred, just a little bit, by serving alongside Grey Team. And she, by the end of the book, she's kind of unofficially part of the team. She's effectively been adopted by them, which is great fun. And certainly, I would love to see the future adventures of Tol-Joran and Grey Team together.
Baby steps, man. Somebody just called Stolt the utter G of the Ungoy, which is hilarious.
Yeah,
Just he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder, but he's deserved it, man. So all these characters and all these different factions, because again, you got 3 factions. You've got the UNSC, you've got the Covenant, you've got the Banished, and the other Covenant and the Banished, there's a little bit of like, you know, back alley chatter, right? There's, maybe I'm gonna go to you, maybe I'll stay here. But ultimately they all want access to the domain. They all want Cortana to not be there anymore, and they all want to take over. So they all have to find a way in, and they all somehow know that it all comes down to this girl. I think, what was it, Dovo Nesta said, we're not going to bother finding it. They're just going to bring her to us. Like, they're just going to hand her over. They'll do all the work and we'll benefit from it, right?
Yeah, it's one of those, like, the different flavors of story you get in there. There's all the political machinations of the prophets in there. And then with, James and Chloe, it's very much the wolf and cub type story that has become quite popularized in recent years with stuff like, The Last of Us, The Mandalorian, all that sort of thing. So, there's going to be something in this book for you that you're going to enjoy just because it's got so much on offer.
I actually really liked when James was picking up Chloe, that whole fight. It did feel, you say Mandalorian, and it was kind of the same vibe, like going to a bar, right? Checking things out, because there's a bar in Mandalorian, you like there. But the way that he basically just walks in and literally, and they're like, oh, there's 6 of us. He's like, that's it? You know? That's nothing. And like, before you know it, everything's happening. Then you find out, he finds the girl. She's like, no, I don't want to go. And he's like, too bad. And just,
She loves her job working for this Tavawan Kig Yar, who's just got her running the books, which is great.
which is wild. Yeah, she just like, no, this is my home. I don't want to leave. And he's like, okay, and kidnaps her anyways. But he also, is making sure that she's not going to get hurt. He's taking, like, while he's going on this crazy motorcycle ride, he's got her tied to him, and he's just constantly checking on her, making sure she's okay. It's a simple life, dishonest work. Yeah.
I loved that sequence, the motorcycle chase. I mean,
Yes.
first of all, because we got to use one of the Mega Bloks vehicles for that, which was good fun. But also, I just had such, red versus blue animated, season 8, season 9 kind of vibes from that whole sequence. It was really great fun to imagine that.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what made it fun, is that you could imagine a Spartan basically going through that. Because at that point, you realize that it is a like full-on Spartan thing. Lola being really sarcastic and unhelpful, so good. You don't have time for that. Like, I know. Leave me. I know. Right? Like, stop talking. So my Halo Mega Blocks collection is embarrassingly big. There's no such thing. Be proud of that. A lot of fun stuff there. So, all right. So we've gone through all that. We all know they're all fighting for Chloe. Like, they all want Chloe because she's got something that somebody wants, right? Do we need to get into what is going on there a little bit, or do we want to leave that?
Well, she's the last surviving Flash clone of Dr. Catherine Halsey back when she created Cortana. And that means that she's got the same, whatever you want to call it, like genetic code to kind of, to unlock the domain, gain access to it, because it would recognize her as, sort of being the same. Halsey's obviously out of reach herself because she's on the Infinity, going to Zeta Halo, and so this is kind of yes, this is our only option. We have to sacrifice the innocence of a child in order to save the species. And that is, that's a moral question that's been hanging over Halo since 2001, really.
I was gonna say that question sounds so familiar. It is truly a full circle moment. Like, literally, that is where Halsey started, and now we're back to the same question. And what do you do, right? That's tough.
Yeah, and that's, when James meets up with Adriana from Grey Team toward the end, there's a hint of that, of, him recognizing it and her understanding what he means when they talk. And, she ultimately decides to kind of cover for him and let him get away and escape rather than, committing to, taking Chloe by force or anything. So that was a nice moment to kind of wrap up his character arc there at the end.
Yeah, definitely just lets him, stick by what he's tried to do all this time, right? Like, 'cause he was trying to get away, like, he was trying to get out of here before this, and the guy was like, oh, just one more thing, one more easy thing. I'll even pay your rent after. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
Famous last words, right? I think one of actually, and then this book, on top of all that going on, you've also got like the really big throwback to like the Lord of Admirals and stuff going on in here, which is crazy. Dude, this book has
Yeah,
it all, y'all. If you have not read it, this book has so much. There's so much going on in here.
that adjunct was something that I got to add to the book, which I was very pleased about. I mean, first of all, like, thank you
Well,
very much to Jeremy for being so generous in allowing us to make some of these kinds of additions to his story. You know, it's that kind of yes and philosophy that we have working with authors that really, I think, just makes these the best possible stories. But the context really for that is that both this and Epitaph, which came out back to back essentially, one book after the other, were all about the domain. And there was a lot of speculation, like, oh, how's Empty Throne going to connect to Epitaph? And as we were going through the story, it didn't really. There wasn't a natural place to connect the events of one book to the other, which is fine. That makes total sense. So we had this adjunct at the end where Forthenko, who was a major character in obviously the Forerunner saga and in Epitaph, he's neurally transmitted himself to Boundary to bear witness to the destruction of the Lithos on Boundary just before he returns to the domain and watches the sunrise with the Didact, with whom he is now, lovely good friends with
as you do.
after the events of the book.
Just,
Yes.
exactly what you expect. Also, I didn't realize it was Forthenko. I kept wanting to say Cho, so good to know on that one.
I've always called him Forthenko, but I'm sure that Forthencho is actually probably the correct pronunciation.
I don't know. The Didac and such a heated rivalry, haha. But yeah, the sunrise thing was out of nowhere. It's okay, sure.
It was we wanted to pull the camera back essentially to the cosmic scale, right? Because we've gone through all these different perspectives, and we wanted to have that sense of the mythical nature to Halo, almost like the gods watching over Jason and the Argonauts type thing. So after everything that's kind of happened there, because their mission, the Didact and Forthenko, is to close off access to the domain, which is that connection point, right? Because that's what happens at the end of this book when Samothrace unleashes its Mac upon the Lithos and destroys it. So Forthenko's like, yep. That's great. That's happened. This gateways done. I'm gonna go chill with my buddy now. We're gonna, drink some Mountain Dew and play some Halo 3 multiplayer online with the Didact. It's gonna be great fun.
Can you imagine? I would probably lose and then like have no excuse. So, how did it come about that you were like, this is how I want to tie this in? Like, what made you think of that in particular?
Well, there were a few like different chapters that I got to add into the book. There was one with Spartan McKendon from his point of view, as he sacrifices himself to free the Ungoi Stolt as they're being crushed by a destroyed building at the end of the battle. Some of this is just like through the editing process. Once you sort of see where some of the gaps in the story are, it's like, oh, we just need a little bit extra here. We need a bit more here. Originally, it was just that Tol-Joran goes, meets up with Stolt, and Spartan McKendon's dead, and there's no connective like through line there. So it was like, okay, what if we just had a very short chapter where a Spartan sacrifices himself for, an alien? That's something that, sort of brings together his more heroic perspective on the Spartan. This is getting to something larger because we have two different Spartans in this book who are sort of binary opposites of each other. We've got Spartan McKendon and Spartan Merrick. They're both Spartan 4s, and Merrick turns out to be, the bad guy. He represents the problematic element of the Spartan 4 program where they come from all these different backgrounds so they could have these different allegiances and ultimately betray the UNSC, which he does. And Spartan McKendon, who represents on the opposite side, the more heroic, self-sacrificing, platonic ideal of being a Spartan. So him sacrificing himself for Stolt by, lifting this crushed building that has impaled him was great fun. I really loved being able to add that. And as for your question on the Forthenko stuff, as I said, it was that connection point to Epitaph, which we were like, oh, we do want to make it feel like this book has such has more of a connection with that one because all of the books that you've read in recent years, Rubicon Protocol, Shadows of Reach, Outcasts, there's been this kind of narrative through line around the Halo Infinite era that kind of reaches a bit of a head in Epitaph, where a lot of the events, even going back to Halo 5, are sort of tied up. And so, originally we were talking about, would it be the Didact who does this, or would it be Forthenko who actually goes to witness this? And it's interesting because, Forthenko is a character who you wouldn't expect to see there. He's sort of shown up in Epitaph as, more of a secondary capacity, whereas here it's like, oh, he's bearing witness to modern humanity and the things that are going on in the present now, and he's getting an interesting understanding of what his people have become over the last 110,000 years since he's been gone. So it was that little surprise just to tease people a little bit of that aspect.
Yeah, just hey, what's been going on while I took a nap, right?
Yeah.
What could have possibly changed? You're talking about McKendo, and actually, Eternal Canadian said it was nice, or sorry, McKendon. He says it was nice to see him at the end think of things beyond duty, and somebody else is pointing out that it is the kind of maybe the difference between like a Spartan 3 and a Spartan 2 to a Spartan 4, right? Spartan 3s and Spartan 2s and 3s were just like created to be war machines. Spartan 4s had to volunteer, so they have a little bit more of that like life experience, and just for better or worse, right? Maybe they're a little bit more sour on the UNSC. Maybe they're, all in. It's hard to guarantee what you're going to get out of a Spartan 4 when they come into this with the life lived, right? If that makes sense.
We've seen that with like New Blood and Bad Blood with Mickey, right?
Mickey and Ilsa were both just name dropped in chat. So exactly. So I think that is the risk you take, but then because which one's more ethical? Converting an adult or a child? Probably the adult, right? When somebody can opt in, that is probably more ethical than, kidnapping a child. I guess that would depend who you ask in Halo.
I was literally about to say, yeah, it depends who you ask.
Because here we are again. At the end of the book, it's not a novel that will necessarily like tie up every loose end, but it does lead into Infinite, so we see some things happening there, but there's also it leaves some like we see some things happen, and there's room for learning later on down the line, right? With some more things that happen.
Yes, I mean we leave everyone in quite an interesting kind of situation.
Right.
The created have been for now, defeated. Cortana has sacrificed herself at Zeta Halo, and as a result, the created have lost control over the Forerunner constructs that gave them such a centralized, power over the rest of the peoples of the galaxy. So there's this now power vacuum that's come about. At the same time, Zeta Halo has disappeared along with Atriox and Escharum, and that leaves Severin kind of the de facto leader of the Banished home fleet, almost, because he was promoted just before they left to go on their little mission. So that leaves him in a very position.
That definitely gives the vibes of like when you lie on your resume and get the job, right? And then like all of a sudden, like here you are, you're the guy. Like what?
So it'd be interesting to see what happens with him, in the future. And obviously, yes, we've Darth Vadered him. He gets very much injured by Volsaran after killing Sally Neon. And so he wears this awesome, life support suit, which was actually a piece of concept art for Voradus in Halo Wars 2. We visually depicted that in a cannon fodder issue, back when the book came out. So if you look at that, that's very much kind of the appearance that he's got. We catch up with Dovo Nesto as well. He's setting course for Cloister. Now this is something that's been building in the background technically since Halo 3, but really since Joseph Staten's novella in 2015, Shadow of Intent. as to where the Sanshayum went after the fall of High Charity. Troy Denning tapped into this a little bit in Divine Wind as well, because Cloister comes up in there. And we had Ait Savi from the Escalation comics. He's the only spy aboard the Covenant ship who is keeping an eye on things there, which is going to be exciting.
You bring him up. There's actually a lot of there were a lot of comments before you even mentioned his name in chat. They were like, "Oh my god, did you see that cameo? That was so exciting! I can't wait to see what he learns." So definitely well loved on that one.
Indeed. The whole conceit of him, he's one of the highlights of the Escalation comics, I think. He's an elite who thinks like a human, is kind of the way that they put it. He's the most human elite that they could find, in that he's got this deceitful nature. He's not honor bound. Escalation had a few different characters like that, like Zeftral, who has fallen in love with human capitalism. Things like that. It just adds a lot of great texture to the universe and to these different characters when the species aren't planet of hats. They all think and act the same way when they're exposed to human ideas or the ideas of other species. They are actually influenced by them in ways that are actually quite realistic. So IE is well placed as a fan favorite in that regard.
Yeah, it's just assimilation a little bit. You learn from the culture. You like things. Capitalist Sangheili did not have that on my Halo bingo list. Well, no bingo for you then. So, and then as we touched on earlier, Tol-Joran is functionally part of Grey Team. She's just kind of there. And
just saying that makes me very excited. It makes me want to just tell a story about her right now, about what they get up to, because just humans and Sangheili serving alongside each other, that's just one of my favorite Halo story setups.
Yeah, and I think having her with Grey Team is interesting because obviously I like them because we've said Cole Protocol and then Tobias Buckles' Envoy was excellent. That was a really great sequel to it. I thought a good follow up with them. Highly recommend those. Those are some of my favorites. And then Hood and Osmond, they did not just get left alone, right? They did take BB Black Box from Osmond and decommission him, but they are back home. They are back at Earth, right?
They're back on Earth. Osmond has said goodbye to Black Box.
Yep.
Who had to be committed to Final Dispensation, which was a very sad scene. It's quite low key, actually, in the overall scope of the novel. After the adventure that they've been on in Kilo 5, and obviously BB showed up in Hunt the Truth, the second season, as well as a companion in that. And he's been in various other stories, but it was a necessary moment to say goodbye to him at this point and commit to the rules of rampancy in this regard, after they can clearly see that he's breaking down. He's losing function. And he's got a great line when he speaks with Abigail Cole, where he's like, "Oh, you're the daughter of Preston Jeremiah Cole.
Yes.
Would you like to know what really happened to him?"
And then she said no. I was like, "Oh my god, am I really gonna know?" And then she said no, and I was like, "Ah, come on."
I mean, that brings us to a very critical scene, of course.
Yeah.
Where Samoth races in free fall toward Boundary, and she has a vision or a hallucination of her father on the bridge alone with her, and they have a conversation. It's the conversation that they could never have, because obviously he disappeared or he died, whichever one it was. And it strikes me as equally likely that either it was a hallucination or Preston Jeremiah Cole has found a way to exploit precursor neural physics so that he can show up anywhere in the galaxy whenever he wants. Either of those could happen.
Let's face it, if anybody could, it would be him. If anybody in the galaxy could find a way to make that work, it would be him, just because of all the crazy stuff he's pulled off. So this book definitely had it all. The space battles were great. The personal growth and character development was great. It did bring in a lot of their threads and tied them together to what's happening currently. And then I wish it had been a little bit more linear personally, but I think this was actually a really, really great novel. And I was pleasantly surprised, especially because I went in with the only thing I knew going into this is that you spent so much time working on it. and I was expecting an absolute slog, and this was way more exciting than I ever could have dreamed.
Wow, you're expecting an absolute slog because I was working on
No, but just like it was
it.
that's not what I meant at all, because I love your work and you know that. Don't do that to me. It was more just like I know you had said there was like so much going on, and I didn't understand that until I started to read it. Then I had a better appreciation for what you meant. But there was a lot going on, and I think that helped alleviate some of the issues I had with like the perspective jumping. That's all.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, it was a tough one to work on just by the sheer nature of what it was. Obviously, the time at the studio was a massive period of transition for us as well, going from 343 to Halo Studios around that time. And, just, it was, I look back on it very fondly now as, oh, wow, we really made something special, through all this. And I'm just very grateful that we were able to do this with Jeremy ultimately, and tell his story that had been building up for so long in his mind. I mean, I remember when he first described it to me, I was like, "Oh, that sounds like it'd be really great." And then it turned out he was actually writing it. It's like, "Ah, let's go."
Somebody earlier I was watching and they were like, and again, the fact that this was Jeremy's first real foray into novel writing for, or like, maybe more than a short story or something, was incredible because he has had his hands in the lore for such a long time. So this is really great. Like, it's a really strong first showing. It's really hard to come out with something so great. But somebody said they really felt like Jeremy understood like all the aspects of Halo, not just one, which I think is really hard to
Oh
do
yeah.
too sometimes. He had such a
I could
really
talk about
great
Halo
grasp.
with that man for hours and hours on end on like a philosophical, almost religious kind of way.
I fully believe that. And I can only imagine once Jeff gets involved or Kenneth that you guys could just like go on for weeks on end. Just want to sit
I
there and
do.
like absorb it, soak it all in. So I did ask chat if we had any questions or whatever, because I do think you said we had some. But while we're waiting on that, I do want to again plug the book guide, aka.ms/Halo book guide. I will make sure it's in the YouTube copy as well. But that is a great resource to get all the novels, are the comics in there? I don't remember.
No, just the books.
Okay, so just the books, but there are comics and stuff too. Somebody would like to know, what was your favorite POV from the book?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think Tull's for me, her personal journey in that book was something that I really enjoyed reading. Like, I think um, we do a lot of stories about villains or antagonists wanting vengeance, such that it can become a bit rote. But having one of the more heroic characters, I think, lends an interesting kind of different flavor to that. Similar in Halo Wars 2, where it's Isabel who's really like gunning to get revenge against the Banished. I like it when it's a hero who's got a thornier side to them, which is great. So yeah, probably Tull.
I think I think I would say James, actually, because I liked that very rogue, I'm just kind of in it for whatever kind of
Mm.
attitude, which is not something you typically see of the Spartans, where it's their, duty, honor, country, whatever. He's basically like, it pays for my beer, right? But speaking of James, and I don't know if, again, realize that any questions we ask, the answer might be a non-committal answer or no answer. But was his Mark V modified in any way post reassignment? Do we know, or is it just stock and then repaired off of, whatever blew off the jetpack?
So you'll see throughout this book, there is a lot of technology that has been described as modified. So you can absolutely be certain that James's Mark V, because he's had to keep that up himself over the years, with everything that he does. So yes, there are definitely going to be modified experimental components, and we get to see some of the technology that he uses, like his glider, his various things like that. So yes, I would describe it as modified.
I think that's totally fair, and I think that makes sense. Him having to do it all on his own is also insane and no easy task.
Because on the Infinity, right, you've got a team of people to,
Right.
maintain you like a race car. Whereas if you're just by yourself and you've got a non-volitional AI hanging out with you, then you kind of got to do it mostly by yourself.
Yeah, you've got and like on the Infinity, you've got the machines to help you put everything on. Like you stand there, right? Look pretty. Yeah, that's no easy task. I'm seeing some questions that I'm not going to ask because I know we won't get answers to, or is things we're not addressing. I'm curious where you believe Spartan Merrick's loyalties were when he betrayed his team. Was it with the Banished or with the Covenant?
It's an interesting question.
Perfect.
Jeremy has addressed this to a degree himself, where his intent was to show the depths to which Dovo Nesto's kind of manipulation and machination were able to go to. Now, whether Merrick's loyalties specifically in that context were with the Covenant or the Banished, the book doesn't spell it out. Personally, I think, he would be more of like a middleman through some kind of Banished sort of perspective on that, but we obviously haven't in any official fiction gone into that. So, maybe that will be clarified in the future, maybe not. We'll see.
A very long-winded way to say I'm not actually answering that.
Well, hey, that's more of an answer than I would otherwise
Yep.
be inclined to give.
That is, you know what? That is totally valid. Totally valid. I'm not seeing too much, so I think we can start to wrap up. We actually went longer than I expected. Oh, how challenging was writing the space battles? That I think is something I always wonder about too, because I know I can't see pictures in my head very well. So I have a really hard time understanding, like when I'm reading something, for me, a lot of times I can skip some of the details because it literally doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't manifest in any meaningful way in my brain. But when you're talking, oh, the ship has to like hit the underbelly or whatever, like how do you plan something like that? How do
Well,
you get from I want this ship to blow that ship up? And then like, how do you
for
get there?
me, for me personally, I go back and I watch a lot of space battles, stuff from like The Expanse, to just get myself in the headspace of like, all right, here's what a space battle should look like. Um, but as to the context of this particular novel, that's more a Jeremy question, since he wrote all these space battles, and he's very much pulling from a lot of the, as we said earlier, the Nyland kind of aesthetic of how space battles been done beforehand. Really, it's about knowing what your ship's capabilities, tonnage, capacities are, which thankfully, we have a very extensive archive of, both in our official encyclopedia fiction and also in our, lovely internal wiki that we maintain. So being able to pull from that stuff and knowing how things should work is always very helpful.
That's totally fair, and I think that's one of those things I would definitely have to do a lot of research on. Oh yeah, Stumpy, we have internal resources for all sorts of things. We're usually in there all the time. I actually really like this question and is not at all related to Empty Throne in particular, but it is that your vocabulary is stellar. Do you ever have to replace some words in stories because a word might be too obscure? Or do you ever go the other way and be like, this word is too simple? Let me give them a harder word. I can tell you from experience, Kat, that I do think he does the latter sometimes, because I definitely remember some stand-ups where Alex would throw a word out and John just kind of like looks over like, that's not real. So
Oh man,
I think
that's happened a lot with John.
I think there's definitely times he does the latter.
Well, when we named the omnibus, he gave me and Jeff a call, and he was like, "Omnibus? Is that a real word?" I was like, "Yes."
Somebody brought up the yes, that word.
Tellurite, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're just getting into like know the man. Maybe we should just do a Spartan chatter that's just about you and your writing process. I think that would be
Oh my
really
gosh.
fun. I'm gonna save that small napkins because I actually like that idea because I think we may need to like come up with some topics
That is a good
because
question.
that is I think there could be just some fun about like how do we get here?
I will say it can't be music with lyrics, otherwise I get distracted. It has to be instrumental, soundtracks, that sort of thing.
That's a good question. What is your favorite memory or experience with this book in particular overall?
Getting to work with Jeremy, just all up, he was a wonderful colleague to have. We I got to go to dinner with him in London when he came to visit back in, gosh, 2022, I think, 23, around Christmas time, and we just spoke for hours on end about all things Halo, his experiences, and this was, while we were sort of in the process of sort of spinning up what this book kind of was, and obviously that lived in his head for a very long time. So yeah, just getting to work with Jeremy, wonderful experience.
If you ever get the chance to meet Jeremy, absolutely take it. He is a fantastic human being. Very kind, very smart, but also just absolutely loves Halo. I do think I think I did ask. He is working somewhere on other projects that he enjoys. So he has found a new home at the moment.
Wherever he's at will benefit to no end from having him.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%. So I think we can probably wrap this one up here. We have another one of these planned for, this is April, so I guess June, since we shifted a little bit. I can look. Maybe we do it at the end of May. We'll take a look at some dates. But I
We've
believe
got a book coming out at the end of May, of course.
right, and it's almost like we have planned this to be topical. Would you like to tell us about that real quick?
Yes, Halo Waypoint Chronicles Volume 1 will be releasing. We recently revealed the voice cast of over 30 narrators, myself and Mr. Jeff Easterling included. But you don't care about that. You care about Jen Taylor, Trisha Helfer, Gideon Emery, all the other awesome voices from, characters in the games that you've experienced, and all the other new voice actors who are going to be in it as well. That's going to be very exciting. It collects all of the Waypoint Chronicles that we've released publicly from 2022 to last year. All of the intel and the Armory Infinitums that we've done in support of Halo Infinite, but also there are 10 news stories and a lovely short poem at the end of this, as a nice value add to this particular book. And you will have seen the titles in our announcement in Cannon Fodder last week. Some rather interesting ones to speculate about there. I'm very excited for people to see what some of these extra ones are, because obviously we were supporting Halo Infinite specifically with a lot of these, as we were going through them, and with these additional ones, we were able to kind of branch out a bit further in the universe and do some interesting things. So yeah.
I did just drop a link to that in chat, so you can catch that there. For those of you listening at home, I will make sure this is in the copy down below, so you can grab a link there as well. But it is going to be exciting. And then I do know we have another episode after that planned around the omnibus release. This is kind of turned into a book club, and I'm not mad about it. But I do want to see if we can maybe, as we get closer to, things happening this year, we've got all of our 25th anniversary celebrations. We've got a game coming out this year. We've got a lot of opportunities for more of these, so we'll definitely keep them up. But I think we're going to put an end to this one right here. So I want to say thank you to everybody who is in the chat and the audience listening right now. If you're listening at home, thank you so much. The next one will be put up. I'll put it up as an event on Discord as soon as I can. So definitely be sure to opt in there to get notified, stay in the know. And then we will see you in the next one. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining. Thank you to everybody. And we'll catch you later.